Ladies and gentlemen, let's get one thing straight. God is not a theory. He's not a concept. He's not some idea you pull out when life gets hard or when you're sitting in church on a Sunday morning. God is not an emergency kit we only grab in case of fire. He is real. He is alive. He is active. And he wants to be involved in every single detail of your life. The problem today is that too many people talk about God like he's just a belief system, just a way of life, just a cultural thing. People will say, well, I believe in a higher power or spiritual, but not religious, something out there. Honey, God is not a something. He is someone. He's not an energy or a vibe. He's not an energy or a vibe. He is the creator of the universe, and yet he cares deeply about you. Hebrews 11:6 says, anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. So right there, God says it. He exists, not as a philosophy, not as a symbol, but as a being who rewards, who sees, who acts. You see, if God were just an idea, he wouldn't change anything. He wouldn't heal broken hearts. He wouldn't speak in the quiet of the night when you're lying awake, crying into your pillow. But a living God, he shows up, he interrupts, he comforts, he convicts, he convicts, he leads. And when you know him personally, really know him, not just know about him, you stop debating whether he's real, because you start experiencing him in ways no idea could ever replicate. Let's be honest. An idea can't answer your prayer at 2 a.m. when your world is falling apart. A concept won't pull you out of depression. A symbol won't hold your hand through cancer, divorce, betrayal, addiction, or the loss of a child. But a living God, he steps right into the storm and whispers, a peace, be still. Mark 4:39, I used to believe in God in my head, but I didn't know him in my heart. And maybe that's where you are right now. You know the stories, you've heard the sermons, maybe you even say your prayers, but you don't feel connected to him. That's because God was never meant to be held at arm's length. He doesn't want to just be respected. He wants to be known. You can't truly follow someone you don't know. You can't truly love someone you don't spend time with. And don't you dare think God is distant. Some people talk like God is way off in the sky, watching us from a distance like a judge with a clipboard. That's not the God of the Bible. That's not the God who walked in the garden with Adam, who called Moses by name, who wrestled with Jacob, who showed up in the fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's not the God who became flesh and walked this earth so we would never have to wonder what he's like. God doesn't want to be a concept in your mind. He wants to be a presence in your life. That means he walks with you to work, sits with you in traffic, goes with you to the doctor, and stands with you in the courtroom. He's not just in the pew or the prayer meeting. He's in the kitchen while you're washing dishes. He's in the car while you're crying. He's right there in the silence when you don't have the words to pray. The enemy would love nothing more than for you to think God is just a nice idea. Because if he's only an idea, you'll never expect him to move. You'll never believe for the miracle. You'll never surrender fully. You'll never walk in power. But once you realize God is a living being, a father, a friend, a refuge, a redeemer, everything changes. Your prayers change. Your attitude changes. Your peace level changes. Your whole life begins to shift because you're not living from theory anymore. You're living from relationship. An idea can sit on a shelf. A living God walks with you through the fire. Let's clear something up right now. Faith is not some blind leap into the dark. Faith isn't pretending everything's okay when it's not. Faith isn't crossing your fingers and hoping God is out there somewhere listening. No, real faith is trust. It's confidence. And it's not built on wishful thinking. It's built on experience, on what you've seen God do, on how he's shown up again and again. Romans 10:17 says, so then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. That means faith isn't automatic. It grows, it builds, and it starts with knowing what God has said, what he's promised, and how he has come through for people just like you and me, time and time again. Let me ask you something. How do you build trust in anyone? You don't trust a stranger with your heart, your secrets, or your future. You trust someone you've spent time with, someone who has proven themselves. And guess what? It's the same with God. We trust him more as we walk with him. We lean on him more as we see his faithfulness in action. I remember times in my own life where I didn't know what tomorrow held. I've faced seasons where I was overwhelmed, confused, exhausted, just plain done. And I'll be honest, sometimes I didn't feel full of faith. But when I stopped and looked back, I could remember the times God carried me through situations I thought would break me. I remembered how he provided when the bank account was low. I remembered how he healed relationships I thought were beyond repair. That's when faith becomes real. Not because I forced myself to believe, but because I had seen too much not to. Psalm 34:8 says, taste and see that the Lord is good. You know what that means? Don't just hear about him, experience him, try him, walk with him. Faith doesn't grow by sitting in church once a week and then living the rest of your life like God's. Not real. Faith grows when you start to lean on him in your everyday life. When you stop trying to carry everything by yourself and say, God, I trust you with this. Some people think faith is about being strong all the time. That if you doubt, if you struggle, if you question, somehow your faith is broken. But can I tell you something? God is not intimidated by your questions. He's not thrown off by your moments of weakness. Real faith says, I don't have it all figured out, but I trust that you do. Faith says, this situation looks bad, but God, I've seen you do miracles before. Faith says, I don't understand why this is happening, but I believe you're still good. Faith says, I'm scared, but I'm not alone. You're with me. You see, blind faith expects you to jump without knowing anything, but God never asks that of us. What he does is remind us who he is again and again. He reminds us that he's been faithful before and he'll be faithful again. That's why in the Old Testament, people were constantly building altars, writing things down, setting up memorial stones, not because God needed the reminder, but because we do. We forget so quickly what God has already done. So when our faith feels weak, it's not always because we need MRA faith. It's often because we've forgotten where our faith came from in the first place. Now listen to me. If you've ever felt like your faith was small, like you didn't measure up spiritually, like you weren't strong enough, I want you to know that you're not disqualified. God can work with mustard seed faith. That's what Jesus said. Just a little bit of real trust in a real God is enough to move mountains. Not because your faith is big, but because he is big. And the more you walk with him, the more you pray, the more you lean into his word, the more your confidence grows. Not in yourself, but in who he is. That's what real faith looks like. It's not flashy, it's not loud, it's not perfect, but it's steady, it's honest, and it gets stronger every time you take a step forward and see God meet you there. If there's one lie the world keeps trying to sell us over and over, it's this: you don't need God to live a good life. That's the illusion. That's the real deception. The idea that we're strong enough, smart enough, talented enough, and put together enough to do life on our own. That we can hustle our way into peace. That success will make us whole. That if we just check off the right boxes, career, money, status, relationships, we'll feel fulfilled. But here's the truth. You can have all the right stuff on the outside and still be crumbling on the inside. You see, people think they're walking in freedom when they push God out of the picture. But what they're really doing is walking deeper into a kind of bondage they don't even recognize. And you don't realize how much you need God until all the things you leaned on start falling apart. The job gets lost, the marriage cracks, the friends disappear, the mask slips, and suddenly all that independence you were proud of feels a whole lot like isolation. Jesus said in John 15:5, apart from me, you can do nothing. Not of some things, not of most things, nothing. That doesn't mean you can't function. Sure, you can get up, go to work, make money, raise a family, run a business. But without him, it's just motion without meaning, busyness without fulfillment. You can build a life, but it won't be a life that satisfies your soul. It won't be the abundant life Jesus talked about in John 10:10. And isn't that what we're all really craving? Not just survival, but life, real, deep, joyful, meaningful life, a life with peace in the middle of chaos, a life with purpose beyond the paycheck, a life where you're not constantly trying to prove yourself or earn your worth. But the enemy has done a pretty good job of distracting people from that truth. He whispers, you don't need God. You've got this. And before you know it, you're chasing things that can never fill you. Let's be honest. We've all tried to do life without him at some point. We've all had those moments where we thought we could handle it ourselves. And for a while, might even look like it's working. You're achieving things. You're busy. People are clapping for you. But then you lay your head down at night and something still feels missing. That's not failure. That's a wake-up call. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says that God has a set eternity in the human heart. That means there's a space inside of you that only He can fill. Not religion, not rules, not surface level spirituality. Only a relationship with your Creator. So when we try to fill that space with anything else, money, approval, entertainment, even good things like family or service, it just doesn't satisfy. And what's wild is that even some believers are living like this. They believe in God, but they're still trying to carry everything themselves, still relying on their own strength, still running from one thing to the next, burned out, worn down, wondering why they're not experiencing peace. It's because we weren't designed to live independent from the one who made us. We were built for dependence, not in a weak, clingy way, but in a powerful, secure, unshakable way. Depending on God isn't a crutch, it's a strength. It's a declaration that you know where your help comes from. Psalm 121:2 says, "My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." Not from my own hustle, not from my bank account, not from people's opinions, from the Lord. But here's the tricky part. The illusion is convincing. It's sneaky. You start thinking, I've got control, I'm managing fine, I'm okay. And it's only when the cracks start showing that you realize you've been holding things together with tape and a smile. God is not some backup plan for when everything falls apart. He's the foundation that keeps it all from falling apart in the first place. You were never meant to be your own source. You were never created to be self-sufficient. And when you try to live without the one who gives life, you may look successful, but you'll feel spiritually dry, emotionally exhausted, and constantly searching for more. And that's because real life, true life, starts when you stop pretending you've got it all together and finally say, "Oh God, I can't do this without you." One of the biggest lies the enemy wants you to believe is that God only shows up when your life is clean, pretty, and put together. That He's only interested in blessing people who've got it all figured out. That you've got to fix yourself first before you can come to Him. But if you believe that, you've completely misunderstood who God really is. Because the truth is, God shows up in the mess. He steps right into the middle of the chaos, the drama, the heartbreak, the shame, the confusion, and the brokenness. That's where He does His best work. You don't have to be perfect for God to show up. You don't even have to be halfway there. In fact, some of the most powerful moments with God happen when you've got absolutely nothing left to give. When you're tired, when you're bitter, when you're angry, when you failed one more time and you're sitting there thinking, "God, why would you want anything to do with me right now?" That's the moment He steps in and says, "I'm right here. I never left." Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Did you catch that? Close to the brokenhearted, not the flawless, not the ones who've had a perfect devotional week, not the ones who've got all their ducks in a row. No, He's near to the ones whose hearts are shattered, the ones who feel like they can't breathe, the ones who are barely hanging on. That's where He shows up. Look all throughout Scripture, and you'll see it. God never waited for people to get their act together. He called Moses while he was a murderer hiding out in the desert. He used David after his worst moral failure. He met Elijah while he was hiding in a cave, depressed and ready to die. Jesus touched lepers when nobody else would even go near them. He sat down with outcasts, tax collectors, and prostitutes. He didn't wait for them to change. He showed up first. That's how He works. God is not intimidated by your mess. He's not sitting in heaven, wringing His hands, shocked by your struggle. He already sees it all, and He still chooses you. And He still chooses you. He still loves you. He still wants to be involved in every detail of your life. You don't have to hide the worst parts of yourself from Him. He already knows. And He still says, "Oh, come to me." So many people think they've got to fix their mess before they pray, before they worship, before they walk into church. But that's like saying, "I need to get healthy before I go to the hospital." No, sweetheart, your mess is the very reason you need Him. He's not asking for perfection. He's asking for permission to step in and bring healing, peace, and restoration. Let me tell you something. God can handle your addiction. He can handle your doubts. He can handle your bad attitude, your anxiety, your heartbreak, and your secrets. Nothing you've done disqualifies you from His grace. His love doesn't run out when you mess up. If anything, it gets even louder in those moments. That's why Romans 5:8 says, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Not after we cleaned ourselves up, while we were still a mess. You don't have to perform for Him. You don't have to prove anything. Just show up with your whole heart. Cry if you need to cry. Yell if you need to yell. Sit in silence if that's all you can do. Because God doesn't need fancy prayers. He wants real ones. The kind that come from the gut. The kind that say, God, I don't know what to do, but I need you. That's the kind of honesty that opens the door for Him to come in and start doing what only He can do. And let's be honest, life is messy. Life is messy. Our emotions are messy. And pretending everything's fine doesn't make it go away. But the beautiful thing about God is He's not afraid of the mess. He doesn't avoid it. He enters it. He walks into our disasters, rolls up His sleeves and says, let's do this together. Maybe right now you're in the middle of something that feels like a complete wreck. Maybe it's your finances or your marriage or your mental health. Maybe you feel like you failed too many times and God must be done with you. But I promise you, He's not. The mess doesn't scare Him. In fact, that might be the very place He's getting ready to reveal His glory in your life. It's one thing to know about God. It's a whole different thing to actually know Him. A lot of people believe in God. They'll check the box that says a Christian on a form. They'll wear a cross around their neck. They might even say grace before a meal. But believing that God exists is not the same as having a relationship with Him. Recognition is easy. Relationship takes time, trust, and intention. Let's break it down. You can recognize a celebrity. You know their name. You know their voice. Maybe you follow them on social media. But that doesn't mean you know them personally. You've never sat down with them, shared your heart with them, or built any kind of bond. That's how a lot of people are with God. They know of Him, but they've never walked with Him. They've never invited Him into the day-to-day, the mundane, the hard stuff, the personal stuff. And that's what He wants. He's not looking to be your distant hero. He wants to be your daily companion. Revelation 3:20 says, here I am. I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. Now listen to that. Jesus is saying, I want to come in and have dinner with you. He's not asking to set up a formal meeting once a year. He's not looking for religious performance. He's after connection, intimacy, conversation, daily life. Some people get stuck thinking God only shows up in church in a worship service or during prayer meetings. But the truth is, God wants to be with you on a Monday morning when you're rushing to work. He wants to be there when you're doing laundry, when you're stuck in traffic, when you're cooking dinner. You don't have to clock in and clock out of your relationship with God. It's meant to be ongoing, like breathing. Like a friendship that's so real, you talk to Him all day long about big things, small things, everything in between. And let me tell you something. He cares about all of it. You might think, oh, well, God's got bigger things to deal with than my stress at work or my teenager's attitude or my sleepless nights. No, He's your Father. And a good father doesn't ignore the little things. He listens. He leans in. He wants to be a part of your journey, not just your Sunday mornings. There's a story in Luke 10 where Mary sits at Jesus' feet while Martha is busy doing all the tasks. Martha gets frustrated. She's working hard, trying to be productive, and Mary's just sitting there. See? But Jesus says something powerful. And Mary has chosen what is better. Her always better. Relationship. Presence, sitting at His feet, being with Him. So many people are trying to do all the right things. Serve, give, show up, check the boxes, but they're missing the most important thing, just being with Him. And guess what? That's where the power comes from. That's where the peace comes from. That's where you get direction, clarity, strength, and joy, not by just acknowledging God's existence, but by walking with Him, listening to Him, including Him in everything. Sometimes we treat God like an insurance policy. We keep Him around just in case. We pull Him out when there's an emergency. But God doesn't want to be your plan B. He wants to be your go-to, your first conversation in the morning, your last thought at night. Your anchor when life shakes you, your counselor when you're confused, your comforter when you're hurting, your guide when you don't know what comes next. And don't think for a second that God only wants the cleaned up version of you. You don't have to wait until you've had a good week spiritually to talk to him. You don't need perfect words. You don't need to impress him. He already knows your heart, and he wants the real you. Not the church version, not the social media version. The one who's tired, the one who's anxious, the one who's trying but doesn't always get it right. The more time you spend with God, the more you start to recognize his voice. You stop second guessing if it's him speaking. You start sensing his leading in situations that used to overwhelm you. You start feeling peace where you used to feel panic. That kind of closeness doesn't come from religion. It comes from relationship, from consistency, from showing up even when you don't feel anything yet, from deciding, God, I want to know you, not just know about you. God is not asking you to perform for him. He's inviting you to walk with him. Not as a distant figure in the sky, but as a present father, a faithful friend, a loving shepherd who knows your name and wants to be part of every step you take. You say you believe in God, but are you living like it? That's the real question. Because faith isn't just something we claim, it's something we walk out. And let's be real. It's one thing to say, I believe in God, when life is smooth, when the bills are paid, when your relationships are thriving. But the true test of belief isn't in the easy moments. It's in the storm. It's when things don't make sense. It's when the door slams shut, when the answer is delayed, when the pain comes and God feels silent. That's when your faith starts talking louder than your words ever could. James 2:17 says, a faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. So it's not enough to say, yeah, I believe God can provide, and then live every day gripped by fear and anxiety over money. It's not enough to say, I trust God's plan, and then panic every time things don't go the way you expected. That's not belief. That's lip service. Real belief moves you. It shifts how you think. It changes how you respond. It shows up in your habits, in your attitude, in your choices. We've got a lot of believers today who believe but don't act like it. They love God, but they still live like everything depends on them. They pray, but deep down they still rely more on their own strength than God's power. They read the word, but they don't live like it's true. And God is calling us higher than that. He's calling us out of spiritual survival mode and into a bold, confident, unshakable faith that says, I don't just believe in God. I live like he's with me in every single moment. Living like God is real means you forgive when it's hard because you trust that vengeance belongs to him and healing belongs to you. It means you tithe and give generously, even when it doesn't make a financial sense, because you believe he is your source and not your paycheck. It means you choose peace over panic because you know he's working behind the scenes, even when you don't see it. It means you stop trying to control everything because you believe his plan is better than yours. Hebrews 11:6 tells us, without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. God isn't looking for passive belief. He's looking for a heart that seeks him, trusts him, and expects him to show up. And let me tell you, when you start living like God is real, really real, it changes everything. You pray differently. You speak differently. You make decisions from a place of peace instead of pressure. Living like God is real doesn't mean life gets easy. It means you face life with a different mindset. It means you walk into battles knowing the victory doesn't depend on you alone. It means you stop carrying things God never asked you to carry. You don't crumble under the weight of the what-ifs because you're standing on the rock that doesn't shake. You stop looking to people for approval and start looking to God for direction. And let's be honest, this kind of faith doesn't happen by accident. It takes intentionality. You've got to feed your spirit. You've got to get in the Word and stay there. You've got to worship when you don't feel like it. You've got to pray when it's easier to complain. You've got to declare God's promises even when your circumstances try to drown them out. That's how you build belief that sticks. That's how you go from head knowledge to heart conviction. You don't have to be perfect to live by faith. You just have to be willing. Willing to trust, willing to obey, willing to say yes when it would be easier to say no, willing to keep walking when you're not sure what's next, because belief isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just choosing to get up one more time, to keep showing up, to keep expecting good things from a good God. And you know what else? When you live like God is real, the people around you notice. Your life becomes a testimony. You won't even have to preach. They'll see your peace, your joy, your consistency, and they'll want to know where it comes from. That's when you get to say, it's not me, it's Jesus. That's when your belief turns into influence. That's when your faith becomes a light in the middle of somebody else's darkness. And it all starts by making one simple decision. I'm not just going to say I believe. I'm going to live like I believe.